Hi, and welcome to Dollars and Making Sense, a weekly show about finance, money, and investing. I'm your host, Ray Treverson from OTG Capital. We broadcast locally on Radio Northern Beaches and around Australia on the Community Radio Network. Always a pleasure to have back at the microphone Philippa Hunt from Wise Girls Money Academy. See, I finally got it right, Philippa. Finally, after all this many shows, Wise Girls Money Academy.
Yes.
Philippa, thank you for coming back on the show. We're going to talk about, unfortunately, an ugly subject. We're going to talk about separation, divorce, and women in finance when it comes to what's happening in this scenario. Now, a few things have changed in your work life since we last chatted. Maybe it's probably worthwhile to give the audience a little bit of background as to why I keep coming back to you as a subject matter expert in this space. Maybe update the audience a little bit about what you are doing now in the financial services industry.
Well, I'm back. Never let go of my own financial services license. And Wise Girls Money Academy was run as a research program to do the testing of it last year with a group of women under 40 on a Tuesday night and over 40 on a Wednesday night, and it worked really well. So that was heartening for the fact that you know that financial literacy is actually going to change someone's life for the better. And so while that education program is now going to be launched a little later in this year, being an online course, there's been a lot of interest because of domestic violence. And so women, I know.
For all the wrong reasons, right?
Correct. So what we're doing is setting up and getting funding for women who can't afford the $297 for the 6-week program plus your personal coaching calls. And we're going to fund women who desperately need help to get set up again. So that's what we're trying to do. And also, we also know that women can't afford personal advice. It's just too expensive. And with what's going on in the industry, as you and I both know, the costs going up. And that's a result of different levies that are being imposted onto the industry that we all have to pay for. So we've decided to set up a much easier regime for women to get advice, which we're now working on, and how that's going to work at the back end. So the whole focus of what I'm doing now is to support women in their financial literacy education, but get them to be financially competent. And so they can do a lot of this themselves with help and coaching and support.
And I guess, ladies and gents, one of the reasons why I continually ask Philippa back onto the show is A, she's licensed with her own AFSL, but B, she is actually still a registered financial planner. And I've got to say, unfortunately, or fortunately, you are still there, Philippa, but you're one of the rare breed of females that are out there that still provide personal advice.
Yes.
And so as a rough rule, roughly what's the gender split of your client base these days?
Well, I've retained a few clients, not many. However, my launch now, working with an accountant that I have since moved to Melbourne, and I've moved over to Lilydale, which is at the start of the Yarra Valley for anyone who's interested in the wineries. But that town has an accountant and financial advisor who desperately needs help. And so we've teamed up because he's both, which is unusual. And so I'll be working with all the women's side of things with him and the clients, normal clients, just general practice. But I'm also teaming up with other women, such as lady lawyers, mortgage brokers, because going through divorce and separation is particularly difficult for a lot of women. It scares the daylights out of them, but also they end up with funds from a property settlement they don't know what to do with. And so part of the focus is assisting those women with advice to get them properly set up into a new home, superannuation. But at the other side is to put them through the literacy program so they have confidence in managing their money. And so the lady lawyers have said, can we help? Because we do this every day of the week, and a lot of women don't know what to do with the property settlement that they end up with, and we need to direct them into something where they can get some help. So that was what the driver was for me to re-register in terms of setting up my business again, but in a different direction. So while the accountant's practice is general, my speciality under this license is to work with women in varying stages of their life, from the young ones, getting them set up and good money habits and saving and investing, which they learn to do themselves, and at the same time help women who are coming out of property settlements and divorce. So they re-establish themselves and get the help that they need, but they also learn how to do it themselves with support. So it makes them more confident.
So there's a preventative element, I guess, when you're getting a hold of these young ladies and women earlier in their earlier stages of life, before relationship breakdown or whatever the case may be that ends up, with their marriage in pieces. And ladies and gents, I'm going to be referencing an article that I drew down from womenandmoney.org.au, an excellent resource. And there's a particular blog piece there called Separation and Divorce. And I'm going to be quoting stats out of that during the course of today's show, Philippa, but it still frightens the hell out of me. I mean, it says here 1 in 3 marriages end in divorce. I thought it was closer to 1 in 2. And anecdotally, really? And anecdotally, I mean, I saw this in my years of volunteering at public primary schools and public high schools, where the rate of marriage breakdowns and separation was particularly harrowing, because you end up watching firsthand the emotional destruction that occurs. But a lot of what you're talking about now, when you're talking about lawyers and financial planners and accountants, this is the backside, or the back end, pardon my terminology there, but the tail end of this process. So after both parties are put through the emotional ringer of what is usually not a pleasant situation, then they've got to deal with finances, and a lot of the times it's not a good situation, predominantly for the women. Is that still the case?
Yes, in the sense that even if women come out with something, what we're trying to do is stop older women becoming homeless, because a lot of them don't have superannuation, because
their job is staggering, isn't it?
Their job was to stay home and raise the kids. It's only the cat ladies that apparently have any money that can do something.
Well, cat ladies are really the term of relevance at the moment, thanks to the United States elections. But
it's taken on a little viral meme of its own.
Has it ever?
It's some amusement, because the thing that we're trying to do is help women have the confidence, with support, to have a crack at it themselves, but they got to have a basic understanding of how money works. If I had $1 for every time I've heard a woman say money scares me and I don't know what to do with it, I'd have retired 20 years ago.
It's frightening to hear that.
They don't get educated, Ray, and that's what we're trying to do, is to raise the standard. And the other thing is that this program is, look, there are financial literacy programs out there. You can buy dozens of books on the subject, but who the hell takes it around Coles when they're trying to do your budget each week for doing your shopping? They don't. I mean, let's get practical. And so the whole point of what I'm doing starts out with female psychology, because the way we deal with money, our language around it, and our neuroscience is vastly different from anything you do in financial planning. And there would be people who argue about that and goals-based financial advice, but here's the thing. Women handle and manage money very differently. And we do it in our language, in our way, the way we've been socialised. One of the things I really want to do on that path is to get into the high schools and get young women in their early 20s to have a really good understanding of why they do what they do with money.
I think it's also I think there's a lot of synergies and a lot of similar experiences when you look, for example, in the medical profession, where women are ignored by male doctors. And in the same light, I would suggest quite robustly that even in financial services, male financial planners will look at a female's financial situation through the male gaze and make assumptions in very much the way male doctors make assumptions of female patients. And the stories that I've read around things like endometriosis, if you then translate that into a financial services environment, the same kind of structure, the same kind of dismissal of complaints, the same kind of disregard that occurs, particularly when, according to these stats, divorced mums will have 68% less super than married ones, but also many of the women that are dealing with divorce, again, because of financial literacy, don't understand what their entitlements are, and that super is actually a huge part of what needs to be brought to the table and settled.
True. The best description I ever heard last year was when I was attending a women's group meeting, and it was a retired theatre sister. And she said, I've never married, never had kids. And she said, the man in my life is my superannuation and he takes care of me. I laughed and I said, can I have that, please?
Yeah,
I'd
fair
never
enough.
thought of it like that. But it's true. She said, I've been carefully nurturing this superannuation all my working life, knowing that that would be what I'd rely on. And superannuation is the man with the financial plan, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, it's interesting.
What a refreshing attitude.
It's interesting you say that, because this show has been going for almost 4 years, and I was looking back at some of the very first shows that you and I were doing 2-3 years ago now, and I remember using a cartoon. It's one of those World War II type of cartoons with the lady
Yes.
with the handkerchief wrapped around her
Yes.
head, and she's in overalls and she's going,
Yes.
I used to have superannuation, but then I divorced him, and that's a similar kind of cartoon theme where you know, the financial stability of a relationship's all well and good until it hits the rocks, and then all of a sudden the woman's sitting there waking them up the next day after the divorce has gone through going, what the hell just happened? Because they're homeless, they're broke, they've got kids on their ankles, and they're
Single
wondering
mum.
what to do. Yeah, and what are the next steps? So look, we're just about at a break. I think it's a good time that we go for a short break. You're here on Dollars and Making Sense, a weekly show about finance, money, and investing. I'm here with Philippa Hunt from Wise Girls Money Academy. We're going to take a short break and be back with you in just a moment. Hi, and thank you for listening to Dollars and Making Sense, a weekly radio program about finance, money, and investing on Radio Northern Beaches and nationally on the Community Radio Network around Australia. The views, comments, and opinions aired during our program should not be construed or viewed as financial advice. Any commentary is general advice only and does not take into account your objectives, financial situation, or needs. You should consider whether the advice is suitable for you and your personal circumstances. If in doubt, you should contact an authorised licensed financial planner. We welcome questions and feedback, and you can get in touch with us via our blog, social media channels, or email. Please search for Dollars and Making Sense in your favourite podcast platform, or check out our blog at otgcapital.com.au/blog. Hi, and welcome back to Dollars and Making Sense, a weekly show about finance, money, and investing. I'm your host, Ray Treverson, and this week we have back at the microphone after a little bit of a break, Philippa Hunt from Wise Girls Money Academy, and today we are talking about women, finance, and divorce. Now, before we went to the break, Philippa, we were quoting some statistics from a particularly good article that I found on the web from moneyandwomen.org, and I guess the common issues, I just want to read off this list. The common issues experienced by women who are separating include a sudden change of income, no doubt, insecure housing, becoming a sole parent, legal fees, lack of funds, re-entering the workforce, relying on income support payments like New Start. Now, the ones that I wanted now to talk about in a little bit more detail is financially abusive behaviours that may occur during separation. And these are the ones I want to talk to you about specifically, because I'd like to pick your brains on what women can do if they are facing these situations, like refusal of the ex-partner to continue paying joint debts, failure to consider super, we talked about that briefly before the break, as a shared asset, refusal of the ex-partner to pay child support, the ex-partner hiding assets, and draining of joint bank accounts. So yes. I guess the first thing is, in your experience, is this quite common?
Yes. In fact, a friend of mine's going through this as we speak. Separated from the fiance some 4 years ago, and because this person is now a retired public servant, believes that their super is not part of any kind of financial settlement whatsoever. Thank you very much.
Wow.
And the lawyers are quietly disabusing him of the notion of this. Hiding assets was another one, helping themselves to what constitutes financial abuse. So you can actually speak to the bank if you find that the joint bank's accounts have been raided, and you can lodge a formal complaint, or you can go straight to the bank at separation, inform the bank of what's happened, and they can put stops on money being taken out. So the banks can actually help a lot.
So I just want to pick up on that as a talking point. We just had a little bit of a drop technically wise, so I'm just going to try and fill the gaps and keep recording. But look, one of the things you've mentioned is going to a bank beforehand. So I think as a preventative measure, are you suggesting then one of the first things that should happen is that either partner, but certainly it would be better if both did this together. But if
there's no way the separating partner will go, because they're desperately trying to take the money out to leave the woman with nothing.
They're trying to drain the account. But so what you're suggesting is that they get on the front foot, get to the bank straight away and say, hey, we're about to go through a rocky separation. Please, embargo or put a caveat on. Is that the kind of thing that it's a legal thing that can be done?
He helped himself to hunt a lot of money out of the mortgage offset account that's in, of course, joint names. He's been living in this mansion that they built together, the lap of luxury, with his new partner. She's been renting. So there's a whole lot there that I think it's also not just the financial abuse, it's the gaslighting and the emotional and verbal abuse that you often see trying to wear down any kind of opposition. And the problem we've got with domestic violence is an awful report was published yesterday that it's always the intimate partners, mostly male, that have committed these atrocities because they heard the word no and they don't understand what part of no means no. And so the problem you've got with male ego for a lot of them is the fact that if you're not going to take the kids, so I'll kill you and the kids. And unfortunately, there's a sense of entitlement that these abusive partners exact on separating women because they see that this is all about their property and their entitlement to it. And when the women are desperately trying to get out of abuse, that separation period is a lot of the time when they're murdered or seriously injured. So we're very much aware of all of this, and she actually had to ring up the bank and lodge a formal complaint with them that this person had taken out all this money of the offset account and no one stopped him from doing it. So he was forced to repay some of it through the family court, but he was determined to take it through the court so that he would drain her personal assets.
Yeah, so I've heard of another way of financial abuse through the banking system, and it was done. I read this through microtransactions, and it's not so much the microtransaction itself, but the use of the 30 characters and using that as a line of abuse. Yes. So that they would send 1, 2, or 5 cents in many increments, and each time sending an abusive message through the banking system. And I sincerely hope the banks have got onto that and started adopting a modicum of common sense that should apply and stop these brutes from doing this, because by any standard, that's not normal behavior and should be admonished and stopped immediately. So let's keep moving on. Another disturbing aspect of separation becomes poverty, because in most capital cities right now, rent is a real issue. And so this particular stat, the researchers found that 18 to 23%, roughly between 18 to 23% of sole parents live below the poverty line. And given that, even as somebody, I consider myself, reasonably okay and in the finance area, I'm noticing that, the last year to 2 years, basic things like car insurance, home insurance, these are going up by rather large increments. There's a report that's just come out that transport has gone up 3 times the rate of inflation. And that's the kind of cost that everybody feels day by day. So Philippa, again, through the Academy, but also through your day by day experience around women going through this, what are other preventative measures? So we talked about going to see the bank. What other things can be done to try and insulate these women from these abusive situations?
Well, they have to get legal advice quickly as to what their rights are and how they can protect themselves. In spite of all the best efforts of police trying to deal with this stuff, they will tell you that 90% of the jobs they get called out is domestic violence.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. So with respect to the course that we're developing, one of the lady lawyers, family law planning partner, has offered to help me write the legal side of one of the 6 modules in this course and update it so that when I'm putting single and divorced or separating women, or women who are finding themselves in difficult relationships, that one module will help them work out what their rights are and where they can go to get help.
So,
go on.
So I guess as a key takeaway then from today's show, is there a resource, is there somewhere like a legal centre, in state-based or federally based, that they can go to for emergency assistance, or at least getting a starting point?
Yeah, all the refuges, those sorts of first place of contact that these women can go to. What I'm trying to do with the program is identify the women who are in difficult situations, who need the help and the skills to prepare themselves to leave if they can. And so they need to find out what it is that they need to learn to be able to take good care of themselves, and particularly post-divorce and starting out again. One of the comments that the lady lawyer said to me was she needed my course as the bridge to stop these women from racing into the next relationship and handing over the money because for another man to manage. Yes.
Yeah. That one drives me insane.
Well,
they go from one abusive relationship into the next without so much as a "how's your father?"
The thing is, they do that because they don't understand money and they're scared. A lot of them have never been allowed to manage money because of the financial coercive abuse. And so she said, we need what you're doing to stop them from going that extra step and losing everything all over again. So that's why we're working in partnership. When I get myself out the other end of this change in my license and what I'm getting done and get settled, so we're coming back to revisit this in late September and relaunch it again.
I must admit, this also conjures an idea. You're obviously aware we have Services Australia come along and talk to us all the time. They come onto the show at least once every sort of 6 to 8 weeks. Justin Bott, who's the media officer. Now, they have a financial information services line, which is totally free. And I always give it a plug because it's not financial advice per se, as in a financial planner, but these are people that can really help. And I think I might actually go and approach Services Australia for them to come back on the show and talk specifically around what Services Australia, aka Centrelink, can then provide for emergency funding, for the kind of things that women in desperate need can go and get, I guess, tap into some resource. Because again, I know, coming from an Italian background, there are a lot of cultural aspects that come to divorce and separation that make it incredibly difficult for certain cultures for women to even mention separation, because all of a sudden they not only cop it from their husbands, but they're also going to cop it from their family. And not so long ago, I remember even in Italian/Catholic environments, women were told, don't even think about divorcing. You go back. Doesn't matter if he beats the crap out of you, but you go back. And it's like, wow, I hope we've come along a little ways, but sometimes I wonder, again, Philippa, from your experience, do you see radically different things, or are we getting better?
The thing I've found with cultural aspects, and you often read about these awful honour killings, where they've done something to shame the family, these women, and so the men get away with it and the women are stoned to death or murdered by their male members of their own family. So that's the extreme end. But any woman who's going through any kind of domestic violence and abuse, her psychological well-being is such that he has threatened to kill her if she leaves. And a lot of these men carry it out. They don't just kill her, they kill the children. And we've heard plenty of that sort of thing. So the problem we've got is And they say, oh, we're going to have education for men. I can tell you now that when a man has decided that he's going down this course of revenge path, nothing stops them. Very few.
I think there's been a very interesting legal precedent set just recently in Victoria where the mother of an abused woman who ended up being killed by her partner was sentenced to 4 years custodial because she forced her daughter to go back to this person. And the judge ruled in this case, the DPP took her to court and charged her with an offence. And she's now serving a 4-year custodial sentence. And I think it sends a message. I mean, we've still got a long way to go, but I think we're starting to move down the path. So look, we're winding up our time today. Philippa, I always like to leave people with some resources and some takeaways. Mm-hmm. So look, I've mentioned the Financial Information Officer at Services Australia. I'm going to follow that up with Justin another time to specifically talk about this topic and what Services Australia might do. But can you mention some resources as well from your end that, as a first point, you know, some background reading, some, you know, dip your toe in the water type thing?
First thing I'd do is go and see a lawyer.
All right, okay. And is there something? Exactly. Is that Dr. Google? So you do some research?
No. The thing is, I would actually go and make an appointment to go and see, even if you have to do it pro bono. Go and see a family law advisor type person to know exactly what your rights are and what you can and can't have, and what the best course of action is open to you legally. Okay,
so that's a great starting point, Philippa. Philippa Hunt from Wise Girls Money Academy. Always a pleasure to have you on the show. Unfortunately, a very savoury topic that we've been talking about today, but one we need to discuss and bring out to the open and hopefully help people that need assistance to get help if they can. Dollars and Making Sense, always about education. Philippa Hunt, thank you so kindly for being on the show today.
Thank you, Ray.